Hey friends, welcome to Woman Owned Wallet, the podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Dare, a serial entrepreneur who has already made all of the money mistakes, so you don't have to. Now I'm working on my money mindset, expanding my companies, and having open conversations with women around a subject that shouldn't be so taboo, money. My company, Woman Owned Wallet, and I are determined to help you foster a more positive relationship with your wallet and help you create a life that makes you say, wow.
Hey Moneymakers, this is Cusco, the podcast producer for Woman on Wallets. You're now about to hear part 2 of the Money and Family episode. If you missed part 1, you'll definitely want to go check that out first. We uploaded it earlier this week, Tuesday, May 2nd. And for those that have heard it, let's just get right into it.
I'd like to just touch a little bit, if you don't mind, on like your sisters and your relationship and like how the money, affected that. I just want to make sure you feel comfortable talking about that. But yes. I do think it's important for people to see that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I've noticed when, and this isn't exactly this situation, but when people lose their parents and like inheritance come into play, that there's just so much stress and tension, and it's all deriving from the money and the perspective of how much somebody thinks they should have or how much they put into it. And I know that you're very vocal about wanting it to be even between me and my brothers. And for us, we're not, from my perspective of speaking with them, and like, none of us feel that we're not even. Nobody's like concerned. We're concerned about everybody just being all right for forever. Yep. And like, we don't want to have that concern that I know you have. That's not our concern. But I do derive it a lot from like understanding how it wasn't always even with you and your sister. And I can understand why you feel that way. But I don't know that it's something you have to be concerned about with your children, which is great because that means we broke a chain.
I'm glad you guys feel that way. And I'm glad you've had the discussion too.
We have. We have it at Christmas right before you guys showed up. We were just like, yeah, we're all good.
So what happened, as I said, my sister and her son were living with my parents. My father passed away pretty young. He was in his mid-60s.
And it was pancreatic cancer, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Pancreatic cancer. Unfortunately, smoking and drinking will do that to you.
Right.
A lot of other things will too, but yeah. And it can happen just on its own. I don't mean to.
Right. I just want to make sure I remembered correctly.
Yeah. I don't mean to denigrate anybody who got it and did nothing wrong to deserve it.
Right. She's a medical professional now, or was. She's a retired medical professional now. So, well, she's got to have the stipulation, but yeah.
Because my sister was in a financial situation where she couldn't live on her own for a while, especially when her son was little, she moved back in with my parents. My folks originally said they would help her get set up so that she'd have an apartment, her own place of her own, make sure that she had enough of an education to support the two of them. And then none of that ever happened. I'm still not sure why none of that ever happened. I think part of it is that my mother looked at it and said, if I let this child leave this house with her, he will not have the advantages that he has with us. It wasn't anything against my sister. It wasn't that she wasn't taking care of her child. She definitely was.
It was maybe just a financial truth.
Financially, it's easier to support somebody with everybody being in one household than it is with two.
Yeah, less bills. I get it.
Yep. Same thing happens in divorce. You try to turn this money into two households instead of one. It's going to be more expensive.
It's rough.
Yeah. Yes. So anyway, my sister moved back in with their child and ended up staying there until he was into college. So basically his entire life was spent with my grandparents. During that time,
with his grandparents.
With his grandparents.
Yeah, with your parents.
My parents, his grandparents.
And when she moved back in, was this when you were in college and you couldn't continue to go to that college because of the financial changes?
I could have continued to go to college to begin with, but I couldn't continue to go to the out-of-state college.
Got it.
Where I was trying to get an architecture degree.
Right.
And there was not one available in-state at the in-state rates.
Okay.
So I ended up having to change majors and go to a different college. Fortunately, got a pretty decent job over the summer and decided that I was going to save up money and go back to college when I could do what I wanted to do instead of just taking general education classes and trying to figure it out, wasting my time and money. So my sister's decision to move back home did affect me financially and did affect my parents financially. So for the next 18 years, my parents, to some extent, supported her, either by spending, they were the ones who bought the groceries. They were the ones who paid for the car and the insurance and the lights and the water. So financially, my sister and her son did somewhat take away from my finances and my ability to move on. I don't hold that against either of them. Right. It was what it was. It worked out. I met my husband. We had 3 beautiful children and we've had a very nice life and we're continuing to have a very nice life. But it's a reality.
It is a reality.
And I also felt that my children were slighted on their grandparents because my mother didn't feel that she could come visit us because she was taking care of her grandchild.
Right.
Even though
her
her other grandchild, she couldn't come visit the grandchildren that I had for her.
And I mean, she always talked about him, but she very much talked about him, like as a son. And so it was interesting to be her grandchild and be like, but he's your grandkid too.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I do kind of feel that
it's just the way it was.
It was hard on me to feel like I was second choice because she wanted to spend time with the grandchild that lived in her house. And she did kind of raise him. Obviously, my sister did most of the raising, but she was second in command. It was mom and dad. My sister and my mom were kind of like mom and dad to the child.
Yeah.
Fortunately, he turned out very well.
Yeah. Incredibly smart.
Yes. He just had a book published. I think that's great.
Wow, amazing. I didn't know that.
Yep. So the financial end of it meant that she didn't feel that she could come visit us very often. We didn't live in state, so it would have meant plane fare and time away from family and time away from him.
Did they mostly live in Arkansas?
They lived in Arkansas until we moved to Memphis.
And then they moved
to Indianapolis. And part of our acceptance of the job in Memphis
moved here to be closer to you.
Exactly.
Yeah, that must have
they
been
didn't
frustrating.
mention when we said we were going there that they had intended to move. And then they moved. So again, we were farther away. It was going to be difficult. Resources were given to my sister and her son for 18 years. And at some point, my mom started to feel, especially after my dad died, she started to feel that she had spent too much time and money on my sister and my nephew and shorted us. I don't think I made her feel like that. I don't think my sister made her feel like that. I think it was something that she just decided.
Yeah, maybe she just had a realization that, like when she was by herself, that was something that was, kind of the family's reality for a while. It's not good or bad. Just it was
what it was.
It was what happened and what needed to happen. And she stepped up.
And at that point in time, my nephew, who is about 10 years older than you guys, 10 years older than Jason, had gone off to school. She wasn't seeing him, but she was seeing you. You guys would come up to, once we moved up to Kentucky, especially, we were able to go up to Indianapolis. You guys would go up and go to Conner Prairie and do stuff with her and spend time with her during the summer when you're on breaks. And we'd see everybody at holidays and come up on weekends and things.
Yeah. And eventually we went by ourselves.
Since you guys were older, I was able to come up sometimes and spend time with her that I hadn't been able to spend time with when I hadn't been able to when she lived farther away, when we lived farther away.
Maybe it's that you guys were finishing strong.
So I feel I did not know at the time that she had decided that since my sister had gotten all of her resources for 20 years, she was now going to dedicate her resources to me. And her resources weren't anything where she was handing me money. On the other hand, it was actually kind of the opposite, where I was paying for a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
If we'd go on vacations and go out to eat and all that, I'd always offer and she'd always accept, which was fine. We were able to do it.
Did you think that she kind of knew that she was leaving all of that to you. So she was happy to accept when you would do it because she knew that it was going to come back eventually.
I do think so. I think that was
maybe
part
she
of
didn't
it.
tell you, but she maybe knew that.
Coming from a generation growing up during the Depression when there wasn't anything, I think she felt that she wanted to have her saver hoard. She wanted money. She wanted her house paid off. She wanted things to be able to give to me because she was a saver. And it may have been her saver personality that was always there. And my dad was always the spender personality. She wanted to make sure that she had something to give to me. She had not had much that came down from her family because they had lost a lot during the Depression. There had been some money, but they had lost a lot. Mm-hmm. So she wanted to change it up for the next generation.
She's breaking her own chains that we weren't even realizing.
Yeah.
I think every generation does it.
And at the same time, because my sister and my nephew, who had been basically her best friends,
right,
and my father, who she couldn't, he had died. She couldn't
be mad at him.
She couldn't hold it against him very easily. She definitely could hold it against him in her mind, but she could not hold it against him that she could not physically go, you can't have this because you left me. I think part of it was that she wanted to penalize them financially for leaving her, for being her best friends and then saying, we're going to go off and do our own things. I don't think that was fair.
Mm-hmm. Or intentional. They were just living their lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can't be in the same
My sister
situation.
met a great guy. They got married. Everything was fine with them. She shouldn't be penalized for having a life.
Yeah.
My nephew went to college, got a master's, got a doctorate, became a teacher, wrote a book, all that good
husband,
stuff. Yep.
And a father.
A husband and a father now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, has been now for 10 years.
Right.
You shouldn't be penalized for that.
Yeah.
But I do think
from her
perspective was that to some extent it was a penalty on them for leaving her. And to some extent it was a reward to me for being there.
Yeah.
And
to us. I mean, like you said.
And to you.
I saw a lot of grandma for a long time.
Mm-hmm. So when she had her stroke and heart attack.
Mm-hmm. This was when I was 20 years old.
Yes.
Yeah.
She was 80 when that happened.
We had just had our 20, 50, 80 birthday celebration.
In Disney.
And I was working at Disney World. So Mom and Grandma came down and I got a good discount on the Animal Kingdom Lodge, which was very expensive. So we had like giraffes out our windows.
Yeah, I'll probably never stay there again.
Yeah.
Not unless a grandchild goes and works at Disney.
Yeah. So we got to have this beautiful experience together and all celebrated. And it was like days after she got home, she had a stroke.
A stroke that precipitated a heart attack.
Yeah. And then she like collapsed in a parking lot, right?
Mm-hmm. And had to be in rehab for 3 months. Mm-hmm. So I kind of feel like my sister had gotten the good years, if you want to say that. I've given you the best years of my life.
A little bit. I could see that. Well, just the active, very active.
The very active, very helpful, got to do stuff together kind of years. Mm-hmm. You and I have.
What we have now.
Have
and
now.
have had, yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And have had for the last
34 years.
Yes.
Since I was kicking in your belly.
And at that point in time, we were looking for a medical power of attorney, and it happened to be in with a copy of her will. And at that point in time, my sister must have seen both. I don't know exactly what everything was, but my mom had said, I want you to be my power of attorney.
To you.
To me, because she was a little afraid my sister would want to go through the house and get rid of everything. I wanted to go through the house and get rid of everything.
Sorry, Grandma.
It was a hoarder house. It was full of all sorts of stuff, so you couldn't walk over. You couldn't walk through a room.
You did it respectfully.
Yeah. I wanted to box everything up and put it in a storage bin somewhere so it wasn't gone, but you could walk through the house.
Yeah.
And my sister might have done that, but I think she was more likely to want to just toss stuff.
Whatever.
And I can't say I blame her for that either.
Yeah,
that's
me neither.
That's definitely
it was a lot, you
what
guys.
I wanted to do.
It was a lot. I mean, it was 6 months of garage sales and research and it was so much.
So at that point in time, I'm pretty sure my sister saw that she had been written out of the will. My mom had decided to penalize her and reward me.
She must not have told her.
And I'm sure she did not tell her.
Because she didn't tell you, right?
She didn't tell me. I didn't know about it until all that happened. And my mom said, do you think she saw the will? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then we kind of figured out that might be her reason for walking out. I still don't agree with that reasoning. Whether you're getting money or not, you still don't abandon your parents, especially not when they're in the ICU. But I understand it.
Yeah.
I don't agree with it, but I can understand it.
Right.
She was hurt. Her mother wrote her off.
Yeah.
And that's not something my mom should have done. And it's not something I feel my sister, this is all how I feel about it.
Right, of course.
Their realities are different.
Of course.
But I can understand why my sister would say, you wrote me off.
Yeah.
I'm writing you off.
Yeah. I mean, it happened in our family, multiple times. Like, this is the straw,
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure in a lot of ways when, my aunt went and had her own life and everything, I'm sure when they did talk, grandma guilted people. Grandma was critical. And while we loved her and she was sassy as fuck. And I was like, some of her last words were curse words. Like, I remember. And it's
a lot of her words were curse words,
harsh.
even not in the last days.
Yeah, that's true. And so she had a lot of harshness in her, and it's probably from some of that upbringing and stuff too. But if she's going to cut somebody off because they left her and then say, your sister did the same thing, if they're very similar people, and she maybe had heard a lot of grandma's stories or something like that when they were together, then, we don't even know. But they spent a lot of time together. And she was like, well, we spent all this time together, Mom,
yeah.
It's not like we didn't spend time together and now you're cutting me off. Like, what happened? Maybe she didn't even tell her at all. Who knows?
I believe my sister's words at one point were, after everything I've done for her, and I'm not sure exactly what she was referring to, but a lot of it would have been, I had to put up with her because my mother had an issue with not being able to shut up. So
surprise, look at us.
Yeah.
I was like, you guys think I talk a lot. You should meet my mom. You think my mom talks a lot.
You should meet Grandma.
You should meet my grandma. I was like, she would follow you to the bathroom and still talk to you. And, I bet Grandma didn't let go. Not that, your sister didn't just stay. It's that Grandma didn't let go, I bet too. So there was again, the push and pull. And they're challenging each other, I'm sure, all the time. And so I'm sure that, she wanted to leave sometimes, or maybe she could have. And it just wasn't
I think my sister
the way her life worked out.
would have liked to have left a lot sooner. If life had worked out that way, I think she would have been out the door months after she moved in.
Right.
It's just not how things ended up working out. It was probably a dream that was unrealized.
Yeah. And how
I understand
both of
that
them
dream.
feel that way. Like, I did this for you. They probably both felt that way very deeply.
I think it would have been very rough to have to live with my mother. I found it rough to be with her for more than, we'd take vacations. And for a week, I could deal with it. Actually, for the first 2 or 3 days, when she's telling me everything about what had happened in her life recently, it was great. The 4th or 5th day, it was old fish. The 6th or 7th day, yeah, I was ready to tear my hair out. But you do that kind of thing. You take vacations, you spend time, you deal with the other person because they're your family. You love them. They've treated you well. You wouldn't be there without them.
Right.
Take note for future reference.
I know. I'm writing it down. We do have a vacation coming up. Don't worry, you guys. I didn't realize it's 10 days long, but I'll talk to you after day 4. Just no, just kidding.
I did put in the request for an upgrade to a better room. So hopefully we won't be on top of each other too much.
I just want a balcony.
Yep.
All I like to do
nice.
is we're going on a cruise. So all I like to do is just sit outside, and I love looking at the water. It makes me feel so small in such a good way, like this rock star lifestyle, like we've been talking about. And I just like calling it that now. I'm going to call all the entrepreneurs I know just like rock stars. But it makes all of the problems in my life that feel so overwhelming or large feel so small. And I just really need that on a vacation.
Well, being a cruise ship,
Yeah. There's plenty.
there's a lot of outdoor space.
There is.
And they can be at opposite ends of the boat.
Yeah.
And we respect each other enough to go, I'm going to back off now, or I need you to back off now.
Lithium.
Yep.
We have a code word.
Yep.
When we're being too obnoxious gas, we both can use it.
Yep.
Be like, okay, it's lithium's nauseous. No, what's the word?
A noxious gas.
Noxious instead of obnoxious. Obnoxious gas.
So if my jokes get too crude, that's when I'm lithiumed.
Yeah. Well, I've always found that when we're together solo, like it really is, there's a big girls trip, girls fun. Like I think that there's sometimes when we're with other people that we are both similar in a lot of ways. Like when we go to Disney World, you guys, like who's going to lead us around? Like my mom and I have been there the same amount of times, basically. I mean, she's definitely been there a lot, but I worked there. So like we both know the way and we're both the leaders in our lives so often that when we come together, we struggle sometimes on who's going to be the leader. And sometimes I want to be the leader because I'm like coming into my adulthood. And I mean, I am an adult, but like it just feels like, well, now it's my time to try that myself. And my mom's like, well, I'm the mom. So like, I'm the leader. And I'm like, it's true. You're always going to be my leader.
Yeah.
But I just think sometimes when we traveled before, like that's an issue, but it's not an issue when we're by ourselves. I don't think. I mean, we drove to LA together.
Mm-hmm. We drove to Florida together. And I don't know. I just don't feel like, I feel like we have a lot of our alone time, even on this podcast right now. Like I'm having a great time and I like learning about, I just like exploring, like I said, you know, what's been going on. And I like when I understand your story more, and this is something that, you know, daughters should know about their mothers. Like I don't have a daughter, you know, and I hope to one day. I hope to have lots of little girlies. I'm saving the baby clothes for you.
She is, you guys. I got to knock on some wood.
If you have a boy, we're out of luck.
Yeah, well, it's all right. Gender neutral.
Either
vibes.
that or he better like pink.
I mean, if he's my little boy, he probably will. So we'll see. But it's just one of those things where as I get into adulthood and as I move forward in this idea of becoming a mom, like a lot of my stuff of like, well, what was my mom like pops up. Mm-hmm. And it's not that, again, nothing's wrong, but if I don't explore it, I can't make the decision for myself. Am I going to hold this chain strong or am I going to break this chain for me next? And so as you learn your mom's story and as you understand her influences and her perspectives and her mom's story, like I want to know grandma's story and how you interacted with it because I'm in that position next, you know, like it's coming down the line. So it's just interesting because I don't feel the same struggle. I think, you know, I'm just trying to figure out who I am. Mm-hmm. And you're my example. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing bad with me figuring out who I am and the stuff I choose to keep and the stuff I choose to ditch. Like, it's okay because I'm a different person and I have different perspectives and different influences every day. And I have a different life, you know? And so much wasn't available in the times that you were growing up that is available to me now. Mm-hmm. And that will be so available to Janet.
Yes.
You know, your grandbaby and my niece, my bestie. So I just feel like it's just important to have these conversations. It's just important to get out there and listen and understand. Because like, as you know, as we go, like you said, your relationship with your mom changed a lot of your life. And so if we're in this part of, you know, your and my life at this ages that we're at, you know, 34, 64, we're both capable of doing a lot. Mm-hmm. And we're both capable of being friends and of being like, we're like a match now, like a pair, like, not a match, like a, like we're going to light it on fire, but it's like, we can be two peas in a pod. Mm-hmm. And especially as your kids are grown and I don't have any kids, let's go on vacation, you know, and let's have some drinks together and let's enjoy the sun and the sand. And just to me, like it's kind of beautiful that I haven't had kids yet in a lot of ways too, because then I get to enjoy this time with my family, with you, with my mom, with my dad and my siblings. Like it's interesting to become a more fully formed human. And it just took me a little longer too. And like, I mean, there's that pandemic and there's just a lot that goes into it. But I feel like right now we're able to be at that point. And one day you're right. As you get older and as I'll become adult and you'll become child potentially because I'll be taking care of you. And that's why you have daughters. I will be there to take care of you forever. That's never going to change.
I feel that right now we're in the glory days of our relationship with each other. I had this with my mom for a good 10 years when my sister and my nephew had moved out.
Like you're both available.
We had moved to Kentucky, so we were closer. We were able to take some trips together. We were able to have long one-sided conversations. I don't think she knew me as well as I know you, or as am learning things I'm learning about you.
Every time you see me again, I'm like, something else changed.
Yep.
Here it is.
I feel a lot of times I don't know even what questions to ask because I was not in a relationship where I ever got to ask a question with my mother.
I do feel that way. Like sometimes I'm like, did you even ask me how my day was? And sometimes you'll be chatting and Dad will be like, so how was her day, Katie? And then she'll be like, so how was your day? Like I can feel you trying and practicing. And we've been raised in this family where nobody asks any questions. We all just chime in. And when we have something to tell people, you kind of have to talk over each other a little bit and be the loudest one in the room sometimes. But it's not that anybody doesn't listen. They're listening. There's not often responses though. Sometimes I feel like I say something and then I'm like, and what do you guys think about that? I'm just waiting because I want to have the dialogue about it. And we're so used to grandma just being the monologue.
Yes.
I want the dialogue.
I think the monologue was the big problem because I have been subjected to that for so many years up until she passed. That was my relationship with my mother.
I mean, you had 60 years with your mom and it was that way the whole time. I can attest to that. And I feel like I can validate a lot of what your relationship was because I saw so much of it, knowing her for 30 years.
And your time that you spent with her. How many times did she ask you a question?
Oh my God, like twice. Well, and it was when she was, so she had that stroke and heart attack when I was 20. And then again, I believe out of spite survived and was like, I'm getting back to my house and I'm taking my stuff and I'm doing whatever I want. And still lived for another 10 years. And so like in the very end, she even passed, or we thought was it literally passing in February.
Everybody was called in to say goodbye.
We all came up to Indy. You called all the kids. We were there. We said goodbye. I sat in the room with grandma, held her hand. She was not conscious. And then 2 days later, you're like, so everything's okay.
She woke up and asked for food.
Like who knew, and so then I went back to see her 3 times. And when she was like in hospice, basically, or I think that's what
it was a hospice.
Yeah, hospice facility. So she never went home again, but she did go to hospice and
for a month.
Yeah.
They said she was probably trying to wait until it was past my birthday.
Yeah. Which it was. Yeah. A few days passed. I mean, now it's been.
Actually, I think
a few days ago.
A few days ago was
It was March 12th.
Okay.
Yeah. I just know because it's also Ryan's dad's birthday. And that's when we were drunk in Antigua getting on jet skis. It was a year after that. And I was like, my mom's mom passed away a year ago today. I'm letting my mom do whatever the fuck she wants today. And I'm just going to make sure she's safe. And then we were on the Bravo show below deck.
Yep.
You would never know it. But there's 2 jet skis in Antigua and they tell you the date because of the pandemic. And like they had to shut down the show and all this stuff. And we were on TV together. Anyways.
Well, you were on TV your very first day. You were on TV on Bravo. You were on TV last week.
Yeah.
But 3 times.
Yeah. For like Valentine's Day.
Yep. So yeah, if you ever wanted to make sure that you got some time in on TV, you did it.
Yeah. We made it happen. Yep. But yeah, she went, she came back to life out of spite, like I said, or maybe it wasn't spite, but she was just such a sassy lady.
She was so mad at my sister for walking out on her.
Yeah.
She was so mad at her.
And I bet she didn't want her to like come in and figure out a way to get rid of her stuff or whatever.
Yes. My sister was mad because Mom said that I should be power of attorney. And when I got the copy of the power of attorney, the way that it was printed out, My sister's name was actually first, but it was on the right-hand side of the page. My name was on the left-hand side, so it was very obvious. So I looked at it, saw my name, and thought that meant I was power of attorney.
Right.
And my mom had verbally said she wanted me to be. At this point, she was out of ICU, but she was still in the hospital.
Right.
And it was
even though like your sister lives closer. So like,
but they hadn't had a close relationship.
Yeah. Just physically closer.
Yeah. Physically they lived closer, but they didn't see each other very often. Yeah. My mom and I at that point were seeing each other all the time and we're taking trips together and that kind of thing. So she doesn't realize that we were starting to get along again. My mom always felt like she only got invitations to do stuff when my sister was kind of required by social norms to give her invitations. Like to say,
she probably wanted a little bit of her own life. I mean,
well,
she was probably putting up boundaries and they didn't know how to handle that.
Things like Christmas. You expect to spend Christmas with your family.
Yes.
Especially if you've got an older adult who doesn't have other people in her life.
And we have a very small family on that side.
Yes.
Like it was just grandma. I mean, after we didn't speak with your sister. So
yeah. My mom actually spent more time talking to my cousin than she did to my sister, which was interesting. My cousin looks a lot like her and could have possibly been her daughter.
She really does. I was like, dang, that's grandma.
Yep. She followed that side of the family and I followed the other side. I look like my cousin's mother.
Yeah.
I look more like her than I do like my own mother.
It's so funny.
Anyway, she said she doesn't realize that since we were starting to talk again and starting to do a few things again, that I was about to put her back in the will. I always wondered if that was actually true. If she
just wanted this light.
If that was a spite thing.
Yeah.
That maybe she hoped I'd tell my sister.
Yeah.
And then we spent the next 10 years with mom recovering, basically. Even though she recovered,
it wasn't the same.
Didn't recover strongly. So I spent the next 10 years feeling like I was my mother's caretaker. I needed to call her and make sure she was okay, make sure that somebody was coming to help her if she needed something.
Yeah. There was a lot of my 20s were about watching my mom and my grandma.
And dad. Because especially after he was able to retire early, he was able to go over. He would make the 2-hour trip from our house, the 4-hour round trip from our house to go over, make sure she had food in the fridge, make sure her water bottles were all pre-opened because it was hard for her to open them.
Yeah. Yeah. He helped
run a vacuum, all that kind of thing. When we did garage sales for her, he was always there helping.
Yeah. He really showed up.
Our entire family.
It was focused on grandma though. Like, I mean, I felt like to be honest with you, I feel like since grandma passed, we've been able to have a relationship, you and me, and we're allowed to define our own one because there's not a third party anymore. So like I said, I'm kind of happy that I haven't had children yet because that would be a third party. So these are, like you said, glower years.
I wonder how it was 100 years ago when 3 or 4 generations all lived in the same house.
Yeah.
Did you ever get to be the grown-up before you were the oldest person in the house?
Yeah. Well, and sometimes I wonder if you can see your kids as grown-ups if you still have your parents because you're the kid, but that makes them like the baby, you know? So I think that there's a lot that changed after grandma passed and I honestly feel lighter now and like past it. And I have so much love for her. And when I went back to see her, you know, when she was in that hospice facility for like a month, I went back and saw her 3 times, one on your birthday as well with the cousin you're talking about. And I was like, dang, even Ryan was like, they look so alike. But so those are the first times that I like laid in the bed with grandma, like in her hospital bed. And she was using her little stylus to scroll on her phone. And she followed like 4 people on Instagram. It was me and Jason and I think my business. And I can't remember the 4th one. And the nurse walked in. And again, you've just heard this. My grandma she probably hadn't been heard. You know, her life probably hadn't been heard. So she kept trying to tell people. And I don't slight her for this at all, but like she didn't see me either. And I didn't feel seen. And I want to feel seen by my family. And so it's just something where the nurse walked in and she was like, oh, you must be the granddaughter. And I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm her only granddaughter. And so she was like, she told me all about your spring fashion, like that you have this new collection. She literally, the nurse could name off everything. Oh. And Grandma was like, yeah, I just tell them all the time how proud of you I am. And I was like, what? Oh my God, this is amazing. And I mean, literally, I've told Grandma I loved her. I mean, I am a lover. Like, I want everybody to feel love. I want you to feel good. And I'm a peacemaker and I'm all the things. But like, she was so harsh that I would tell her I loved her and she didn't say it back. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, the multiple times that there's sometimes I was with Dad or with you or whatever, but the times I was there were the first times I remember her ever telling me that she loved me. Mm-hmm. Like, she probably did when I was little. There's cute pictures that I've just found of like her playing with me in a pool when I was like 4. Like, there was definitely love between us, but I'm an auditory person. Why do you think I have a podcast? You know, I needed to hear it. And with all the other words she said, I was like, you can't say love too, Grandma. Like, come on. Yeah. Like, I'm going to challenge you too, because that's what your family does.
That's what I grew up with.
I know. I can see that. Like, I can see because there's actually this thing I posted on our stories yesterday. There's this show, Ted Lasso, and I told you about it. But it's very like mental health stuff and it's very positive. And I'm Ted Lasso in the show and Adrian's the coach and it's this whole thing. But Ted Lasso goes, I love meeting people's moms. It's a roadmap to why they're crazy. And that's how I feel about people meeting my mom on this podcast and about people hearing about your mom on this podcast, because the two of you are my like female influences. And for so long, I am very different than y'all. And I feel very soft and very, very like sensitive. Like, I'm very aware of my emotions, of my, the lights are a little bright like right now, like my senses. I'm very in tune with myself in those ways. And sometimes I feel like I'm like that because, and I don't mean this negatively, but like, because you were off doing other things. And sometimes I used to feel like it was a little bit latchkey or abandonment in those times because I was like, oh, I needed my mom.
Especially with two brothers were probably picking on you.
Oh my God, all the time. All the time.
Or at least the one of them.
Yeah. But you had to gang up with him or else, you lost. So anyways, but yeah, I just had so much positive masculine energy around me that, I remember like wearing a dress. Like, Grandma gave me like 80 dresses one time for my birthday that she got at like
Goodwill or
garage sales or whatever. But I'm like I'm playing hockey in the street, like street hockey. I got my rollerblades on, but I'm wearing a pink dress. And so I feel like I've always been struggling with that. But I feel because I wasn't as seen in some of the times I really wanted to be seen, I've always been kind of like struggling to be seen. And because you and Grandma are those female influences in my life, I'm like, oh, I just want them to see me. Like, the boys see me and like, whatever. I've never had an issue with familial, like my relationship with family that are men, or my relationship with my husband or any men, I'm fine. But I wanted like female validation because to me, that was the hardest thing to get, like I had to I didn't get what that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
And so for me, no wonder I started this thing that's like, I want sisters and I want all this stuff. And I just want to really prove that to myself and break this chain of like, female relationships are either good or bad. Like, no, they're complex and they're intricate. And like, I want to explore that and just sit in it, because for me, it's true that I've had positive relationships with women. And every single time I have a conversation on this podcast or whatever, like it's always so positive. And I think that's a chain I'm breaking that maybe came down my line. And the chains that I'm keeping, are just the generosity that you have. Like, we talk about my mom being a spender. To me, she's so generous. Like, I love to, like, you were so kind and so generous. You would give anybody anything that they needed forever and always. Like,
I tried to give your mother-in-law a kidney. I tried.
I'm keeping those chains, and the other ones that I'm breaking are what make me me.
I wonder if that chain, that tough, don't get love kind of chain from the women, has come down from my mother to me because that's what came down from her mother
Exactly.
to her. She was the second child. My grandmother was 40 years old when she was pregnant with my mother.
In the Great Depression. Like, I can only imagine what grandma's mom was like. Like, I have no doubt that grandma is the way she is because of the women in her life.
I'm pretty sure she was not an expected or wanted pregnancy. I don't know if it was because they thought they couldn't get pregnant, or I don't know any of those details. My own grandmother died when I was quite little, so I never really knew her. I have one recollection that when she came to visit us after she broke her ankle or her wrist or something and had to come live with us for a little while. And she sat down on my sister's head on the couch because she didn't see her lying there. That's the only thing I remember is my sister being upset about
apologize to you?
Oh, I don't remember that part.
I'm going to say probably not.
Probably not. Probably didn't
Get out of the way, kid.
She was a heavier woman. She's probably about my size. She may not have noticed that there was any extra girth down there. But
so funny.
But that's my recollection of my grandmother. And I don't remember her ever being loving or kind to us as children. Of course, I was very little, so
right.
I was probably 5 when she was living there, and she died shortly after that. So very little recollection of all that. I'm guessing that my mother didn't get a lot of affection.
Yeah.
Which is probably...
because even like hugging and stuff, grandma was like, okay.
Not real big on that.
Yeah. And I'm like, hug me. And my mom, you hug and you go rawr, like, because you're a bear. Like, we're all bear hugs.
We all do bear hugs. Yep.
Because you broke the chain, you needed hugs.
And on the phone, we always have to go, I love you when we get off the phone.
Yeah.
And that came down from
Jason
my dad's
and Daniel
side.
and I do that too. I'm like, I love you. And they're like, I love you. So like none of us are worried about
I've
that.
done it to people on the phone that I barely knew.
You're like,
after a good conversation, I felt like I was talking to one of my kids.
yeah.
Okay, bye, love you. And occasionally I get a love you back.
Yeah. Well, remember we were in the car driving back from something recently and you said, you know, I don't have a lot of friends like right now. There's nobody I would give a kidney to. And I was like, well, Mom, like,
if you needed it.
Well, I know, but I'm not, that's not what I would equate a friend. There's not a lot of people I would give a kidney to, but I have a ton of friends and there's a lot of love. And with how kind and generous you are, I was like, I think what that sounded like to me is that chain of toughness and of, if they're not in my life right now, that means they're not in my life, which grandma had. And I worried, I was like, Mom, because you said like, oh, I've had friends here and here and here. And I was like, Mom, it just sounds like you make friends really easily. Like, why not tell yourself that?
I always have, wherever I live, a couple of friends that I feel close to, that I could call, that I could ask a question of, that I could ask for help from.
Yeah.
Jackie and Samantha.
Yeah.
I feel close to them. Jackie more so probably because we've been able to spend more time together.
Yeah. And she's great.
Samantha's raising a child the same age as my granddaughter. She doesn't have time, energy. She doesn't have a second in command.
It's her reality.
Yep. So her availability to have a stronger, more active friendship, not stronger, but
maybe
a more
active friendship
more
is
active
the way.
friendship. And she also has a large family, so she has a lot of friends that are built in because they're family.
She's got the village.
Jackie's got the village too. My village is pretty small.
We don't have a big village.
Nope.
I mean, it's us. Like,
we got a little township.
we really do. I mean, even when we had all of the family at Thanksgiving, it was like 19 people.
And they're all on Dad's side.
Yeah. Like, so maybe it is just seeing that maybe you just want the village, you know, and you just want a little bit of the active friendships and stuff. But I just found it as like, it just felt like harsh language to yourself. And I told you that. And I was like, I think there's some ways to positively spin this for yourself that just don't have to be as harsh. And from going from your mom being harsh and your daughter being soft, maybe there's a good middle for you that feels comfortable for both ways.
It surprises me that you call yourself soft because of my mother and myself and you. I would consider you the toughest of any of us.
Wow, really?
And again, that's not a negative, not in my mind at all.
No, I'm just surprised.
I don't think Mom or I could have dealt with the possibility of criticism. I know you've actually gotten criticism, especially from from guys that don't like the whole feminist concept.
The trolls, the death threats. I've told her about them.
Yep. That kind of thing would probably put me off of doing this kind of work. Mm-hmm. I have a rough time with any kind of criticism, especially if it comes from somebody that I feel close to.
Yeah. When I let down women online, I get upset. When I let down men, don't get me wrong. Like, again, I love men, and people get me mixed up with that a lot, but they're saying more things that are, I'm not going to have sex with them. And they're upset. And I'm like, I wasn't going to have sex with you anyway, bro. Like, I've been locked down for 20 years almost. I mean, not quite that long, but still, like, it's always the comment from that I receive online that's from a hater or troll that is criticism is always about my looks or about women oblivious to their waistlines must be what WOW stands for. Something like that. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, dude, I'm not insecure about that stuff. Like, I'm not always secure, but I'm not like, it's not a thing that matters to the impact of my life. Whereas like women will give a comment that's a little bit more, hey, like I'm not seeing enough like racial diversity on your page. And I'm like, you're totally right. Mm-hmm. I'm so sorry. And I'm working on that. This is a very small brand and most of it's me right now. Mm-hmm. And I'm a white woman. Mm-hmm. And I have a lot of responsibility as somebody representing all women to make sure that there's, diversity here. And I appreciate your comment. And this is not something that will continue to be an issue. Mm-hmm. So that's how I can respond to it because I care about what they said. Mm-hmm. So I can usually, I still I love to cry. So I'm just like, I release the energy and I'm like, okay, I cried about that or whatever. And then like one of our sponsors for the podcast is Kindness Cookies. And then she sent me a box of cookies and I ate them while I like had that little thing on the screen about women oblivious to their waistlines. I was eating cookies and I'm just like, see, it's okay. But yeah, some of them affect me more than others. That's my point. But yeah, the criticism, sorry. That was a tangent, obviously.
Yeah, the criticism is hard. I think you're very tough for being able to deal with that criticism.
Yeah, I just don't let it stop me.
And I don't like to cry. So it gives me a headache. I don't like to cry.
She doesn't like crying.
No.
And I'm like, a cry is just a release for me. I'm into it.
The last time I actually truly cried, I think it might have been because I dropped something on my foot.
Yeah. When you hurt yourself on your eyebrow, did you cry?
Oh, yeah. No, that was more swearing.
Yeah. But you're talking about physical pain.
Yeah. The actual crying because somebody hurt me, somebody got to me. I avoid that.
Yeah.
I avoid movies that are going to make me have an emotion that's too strong, that's going to make me feel bad for any amount of time. Mm-hmm. I won't watch The Notebook.
And I'm like, let's watch The Notebook and eat ice cream so I can
cry. No. Nope.
Yeah.
I will avoid that at all costs.
Can I tell you something I've been exploring recently with emotion? And so I just got cupping done today, which I was showing my mom, and I had like a massage and stuff. And I've been exploring this with my therapist as well, is that when I think I'm going to use the word allowed because I don't have a better word, but what was accepted in our relationship probably was physical pain is important. Mm-hmm. Physical pain deserves attention. Mm-hmm. Emotional pain, because you're not interested in interacting with it, as you just said, and I have a lot of it, it's just harder to find how to deal with that. And like I said, I recognize that you waded the waters with me, and this so many of these things that we went through together, it's the first time you did them. You know what I mean? So like, who knows how you're going to react who knows how I'm going to react when I have a daughter? So it's not a judgment, but it was part of my perception is that physical pain was allowed to be cried over, but emotional stuff, I had to get strong and I had to be tough. And that makes sense because of what you just said and what grandma was like as well.
My masculine energy feeding through to the relationship.
Exactly. So that's what I mean in masculine energy.
Yes.
And in feminine energy, I'm like, I have a lot of that where I'm just like, no, like my emotions used to, and truly I appreciate that y'all had your ways of going about emotional stuff because I was probably overly emotional it would have held me back. And so I'm wading through the waters of my therapist of like, I'm talking about something emotional and I'm tensing my hands and I'm holding my body. And in this weird way, I'm like fighting myself and not allowing myself to have just emotional pain. I have to have physical pain to be allowed to cry, or that was just in my body. So the physical pain is just tenseness that I hold everything in order to be able to hold it together on the outside. So I need a lot of massage and a lot of this cupping and a lot of time to heal physically, because I'm almost hurting my own body and not allowing it to heal, because I think that that's the main thing that
expected.
Yeah, I think it's my brain is telling me that that's how you process pain. Pain is only allowed physically. So when I don't feel well physically, which is a lot every day right now, I want to find the way to feel emotionally safe and secure and all of that and cry, which is why I allow myself to do it now without holding it in my body. I think it makes sense.
I think it does make sense. I'm now thinking of something that I hadn't thought of before.
Yeah.
So good podcast.
Yeah.
You're expanding my horizons.
We'll just do 2 parts. It'll be okay.
Yeah.
Y'all know that I love being kind, generous, and I love something sweet. No surprise there. Well, after I got a really negative comment on TikTok, I was introduced to the most loving, kind woman named Ashley. Ashley is the owner of Kindness Cookies, and she sent me a massive box full of amazing cookies for me to enjoy. I think I ate them for a month straight because they're individually wrapped. And now, Kindness Cookies is a sponsor of the WOW podcast. So let me tell you about them. Kindness Cookies is a small, woman-owned business that ships gourmet, chewy, soft cookies nationwide. The mission of the company is to spread kindness through their cookies and through their charitable donations, which makes it the perfect gift for celebrations, birthdays, and really just every day because, well, you always need something sweet, right? I sure do. Every month, there's a new flavor and a new charity to support, so you can put your money where your mouth is. Kindness Cookies has seriously hooked us up with a discount for WOW listeners. You can use code WOW for 25% off your first order with Kindness Cookies. Yeah.
So good podcast.
Yeah.
You're expanding my horizons.
We'll just do 2 parts. It'll be okay.
Yeah. I am on an antidepressant. I've been on one for at least 20 years.
Is Lexapro an antidepressant?
Yes.
I'm on one too. Yay. And I love it.
I'm on duloxetine. I had tried.
I tried that and it kept me up all night, Mom. All night.
I had been on two or three other ones. Yep. I'd been on 2 or 3 other ones and they didn't seem to be doing what I needed them to do. And that's to tone me down a little bit.
Chill you out?
Make me less unhappy. My depression shows up as crying all the time. I don't cry anymore. I haven't cried for at least the 20 years that I've been on this.
Yeah, and you don't like crying.
I don't like crying. I don't want to cry. I want to be tough and strong and go on about my day. When my mother passed away, I did not cry.
Yeah.
I might have teared up a little bit, but we knew it was coming.
Right.
There had been so many close misses, near misses ahead of time that I'm not surprised I wasn't crying. When my dad cried, pre-antidepressant, and also 30 years before, 20 years before, when my dad passed away, I cried like crazy. I cried when I found out he had cancer. I cried when I came to visit him. I cried when I was hugging him. When he actually passed away, I was holding his hand and I was crying.
I remember you being more emotional when I was younger.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of the antidepressant medication that calms my crying, and I actually prefer it that way.
Yeah.
Which is maybe not the best way to be. Maybe I do need to be crying more.
It's a defense mechanism. I mean, and everything is a trauma response. I'm like, oh, that's a new thing. And I'm like, oh yeah, because it brings me back to this time. And it's just and trauma is just stuff you couldn't process, quickly enough, basically. So it just stressed you out. So it can be from that stuff. And it does make sense that you like the antidepressants. And I mean, I do as well, but I still cry on them. But for me, it lessens the activity. I have anxiety more than depression. And anxiety makes me move and do stuff. And I like to move and do stuff, but the depression paralyzes me. So I would rather be lessening the voices and doing I'm going to use the word quote unquote normal amount of stuff versus just overdoing it all the time to try to get attention, you know, or whatever, and be like, I just want to be seen, whatever it is. It's more like, no, I see myself and I'm okay with that. And like my relationships with everybody are better because I can come to it from a more positive place. And I'm not I don't have the 14 voices going all at once being like, do this, do that, like the ADD stuff, and being like, no, you got to do this and that and that. And just being all over the place, it keeps me like chill.
Yep. I'm not sure the 14 voices would be ADD. I think that's more bipolar.
No, I mean more like
I know what you mean.
Activities at once. Like I like to do multiple things at one time, but sometimes that's so overwhelming that I can't.
Jason and I talk about that as being constructive mania.
Yeah.
When are you going to accomplish this thing? Is it going to be today? Is it going to be tomorrow? Is it going to be next week? Is it going to be never? I want to look at my mania and go, it's going to be today and it's going to be great.
Yeah.
I might drink too much Coca-Cola to get myself into that somewhat manic mode. But then again, I built a wall, or I put a roof on a house, or I put a deck together, or I did something that had to be done.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to build yourself up for that, like you said.
Yeah.
And if you're combating the depression like medicine, you have to almost go the other way. I mean, I'm talking to a pharmacist, you know, so like, you know what's up. But it is interesting to kind of see where we all hold it and what happens. And, you know, my brothers have boundaries too, and they're adults and they're figuring it out for themselves too. And I think for me, it's just like we've talked about, like it's just changing a little bit, and I'm finding new things, and I'm just exploring. That whole like finding yourself, like I didn't do it in my 20s. I ignored myself in my 20s and was like, oh, I should just like myself and not, you know, let everybody tell me how to feel about myself. And I don't subscribe to that anymore.
I wish that when my mom was younger, I had been able to talk about some of the same sort of stuff with her and kind of find out why she had the kind of moods that she did. The wanting to be all tough, not wanting to have hugs, not needing to say I love you, not asking her what her childhood was like.
Yeah.
Because she never wanted to discuss it.
Yeah.
I don't think it was all negative. I don't think there was technically abuse or anything.
Yeah.
I mean, withholding love to some extent could be considered a little bit of an abusive situation, but I'm sure there unintentionally difficult situation.
And again,
abusive.
it's how she perceived it versus how they, you know, maybe it was less harsh than how their parents treated them.
And I don't know if my grandfather was the same way that my grandmother was, if they were both not expecting another child, if they both had difficulty with bringing a baby in when their other one was 10 years old.
Well, us tough women like sentimental men. So I could see that because, like, I mean, Ryan's tougher than me and I'm sentimental AF. So I'm just like, but like dad's sentimental for sure. And you're tough. And,
my dad cried at Chuck E. Cheese animals singing on stage.
Yeah. Well, and my dad, every time I sang or did anything, cried. And I think it's the sweetest thing because I just feel seen by it. You know, I'm like, oh, I can, you know, evoke this emotion and this beautiful thing that somebody else felt. So, and I'm just like into the feelings. I just like it.
I didn't cry when you guys were born, but he did.
Yeah.
Dad did.
Yeah. So I think maybe it's, again, finding that push and pull, the saver spender, the opposites attract. Like you have to recognize that in other people and also own up to what your part of it is in good ways and bad ways and neutral ways. Like I'm like, okay, well, like you said, Ryan does the cooking, but I do the cleaning. Like those are equally difficult jobs in different ways. And so we both contribute, and we both, when we struggle, it's because we're going against each other and competing. And I'm like, no, dude, like we're on the same team. You know, we're in this marriage. We signed these papers. We took these vows. We're on the same team. And when we both remember that, like right now, we've done really, really well. And I think when you do have those opposites and you're working on the same team, beautiful things happen because different perspectives come in.
And it doesn't have to be spouses. It could be anybody that you are in a relationship with, a mother-daughter, a grandmother, granddaughter. As long as you're looking at it as being we're on the same team.
Yeah.
Your brother said that after the divorce, that he was, because of the divorce, he was very negative towards his ex-wife. But when he talked through it with someone and they said, remember, you're on the same team. You're both
For
trying to
her.
make sure that this child gets raised in a happy, loving
Yes.
situation.
Yes. She has to come first.
That apparently made it much easier for him.
Yeah.
It took me a little bit longer.
But that makes sense.
I felt bad for him because of the situation.
Well,
so
he's your baby.
he's my
your
baby. So
first
I had to
baby.
resent her for a while, or felt that I had to resent her for a while because she, in my mind, hurt him.
Right. But you also feel the way that your mom felt, that someone left you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
you don't like that feeling.
Right.
And when the vote women, that's our maiden or your maiden name, feel that way,
Mm-hmm.
they retaliate or like react, not retaliate, but your reaction is to be like really upset because you feel abandoned. And I felt that way even when it happened too. And trying to wade those waters was interesting.
Yep.
But I was trying to be there like for the whole family in a lot of ways. But we all know it was for the best.
Yep.
Yeah.
Your dad took it especially hard.
Yeah.
There hadn't been divorces in the family. It was not something we did.
Yeah,
we
y'all, there's
stuck it
no-
out,
yeah.
good and bad, good or bad.
Yeah.
And there were probably some bads in there that we didn't
Right.
acknowledge.
Yeah.
But good or bad, we didn't get divorced. And it felt like abandonment to both of us.
Yeah.
And I think I felt very hurt by
Yeah.
the ex-wife for a while.
Yeah.
I'm seeing that she's doing a good job raising the granddaughter.
Great job.
She's
Great job. Yeah.
great job. She's doing very well with letting us have a significant role in her
Yeah.
development, in her care, in being around. There was a lot of that I was very worried about.
I think, you guys were mostly just scared that you wouldn't have the relationship that you now know you do.
Yes.
So for a while, the resentment was it's
took
her fault.
Our one grandchild
Yeah.
away from us.
And it wasn't that it was her fault. She's just living her life and, it wasn't the right situation. And in a lot of ways, like it makes sense why they weren't together in so many ways. And I'm happy that they're both, doing well
moving on.
individually and doing well, like better now together. Cause it's also just a lot of shock,
Yep.
and you don't know what's going to happen in the future. And the anxiety about that causes you to have concerns that you don't even know how to express. So you're just mad. You're just upset because you just don't know what the future is anymore. Where when she was born, you're like, oh, this is my first grandchild.
Yes.
Like, I'm going to be this kind of grandma. Like, you have all these expectations for yourself. And now you don't know,
Yeah.
when she left. So,
Yes.
when they got divorced, you didn't know. So like now it's kind of soothed.
This is going to be a 3-part
Yeah, it is.
conversation.
No, 2's good. We're almost there. But I feel like, it's definitely been, we're out of the woods for sure in a lot of ways. And, it's still going to sting or whatever because we're just so not used to it
Yeah.
as a family. And she wasn't used to it as like her family wasn't used to it either. So we haven't even had their whole perspective. And, it's hard on everybody, but it's definitely for the right reasons now. And Janet is thriving.
Yep.
She's the cutest little thing.
It's so funny.
You just spent all
too,
weekend with her.
when we trade her off, when her mom handed her to me and we were playing together and her mom said, give me a kiss before I go. She was like, nope, I'm playing with grandma now. Goodbye. She barely got a kiss from her. And when I traded her off, nope, I'm back with mom now.
Yeah.
Go ahead, grandma. You're out of here.
Get out of here,
Yep.
Grandma.
Yep. She is tolerating the whole thing. She's thriving on the whole thing. It's not even tolerating it. She's doing well with it. She's great with trading out people. She's going to be very social, I think.
I think
because
she's very social, yeah.
she's very able to work with different people in different ways.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, Ryan, my husband, was definitely like, no, you guys, this is going to be okay. And because it was right, like he was about, I want to say like 1 or 2 when his parents got divorced. And he was very, in between them. And he was like, it's not going to affect, we're all concerned about her, but we're also concerned about our relationship to her. And just will we have one because she was so important. She is so important to us.
And had left the state too.
Yeah. So it's just, it feels far.
The proximity to the child was also affected.
She sounds like Grogu, like the child from like the baby Yoda.
And I think it helped us knowing Ryan, knowing what a great guy it is, how normal, how well adjusted he is.
Yeah.
When you brought that to my attention, that he went through the same thing at the same time.
It's more abnormal that we have all stayed married. Like there's so many people, but it was just new to us. And going through that is anything that's new to you is difficult.
My sister's had one husband. My two brothers-in-law that are married have only ever had one wife.
Yeah.
It's just the way our
grandma
family
didn't
is.
get remarried, and I didn't see my grandparents in love or married even realistically. Like my childhood when your dad passed was I was like very young. And so like it was just interesting to see our view on marriage as like either your spouse passes or you stay married forever. But, Jason was always going to break molds and just challenge everything.
Break stuff in general.
That's what us artists and people do. Like, he's always, had his own path. So, and I mean, now that we're more through it than we were before, we know Janet knows us. She loves us. She calls me Bessie now, which is close to bestie. We're getting there. I was going to say this little like Elle Wood statue on my desk over here is the one she/my brother gave me for Christmas. And you gave me that cute little cactus that says besties. But she literally will come right up to you and she's like, I'm here with you now. She's so present. And what we can learn from her is how to be very present and be like, okay, we need to move on and past this. And so she's going to break chains we don't even know about too. And I just want to be open to those that break and those that continue, and hopefully just watch people grow into their own people. I should have been like in sociology. Like I really love.
I think you kind of are.
I feel that way. I have a couple degrees, but not sociology. But I mean, I feel like this is a great place to end. Like you're in this great place. You're traveling the world. You're a beautiful grandmother. Like, I mean, it's a really cool place. You're in your glory years with your daughter, like, of course, life has been difficult and tough and harsh in times, but it's been so beautiful and so educational and so, I don't know, just like comforting in so many times. And I do know that I can always call you, and that I know that you can always call me and we can figure stuff out, but we're just gonna keep going, gonna keep figuring it out and try to understand each other versus trying to just talk over one another. And maybe when we go to the bathroom, we won't follow each other and keep talking like Grandma did. Maybe we'll break that chain.
Yes.
I think we did.
Let's break that chain.
I think we did. And we're there. So just thank you so much, Mom. I love you.
Thank you for having me on. This has actually expanded my horizons a bit too.
Good. Well, and think about it. Like Janet's going to be able to listen to this. So Janet will know why her grandma was the way that she was. Like, I think that's really cool. And I think like this is a good time in our lives to be talking about these things and to be exploring these things and just not be so scared of what might come from them, because at the end of the day, I'm not leaving you. Abandonment is not something I'm interested in, and I hope you never write me out of the will, but I'm your executor. Nope. So I think I'm everybody's at this point.
I hope anybody that listens to this gets the gist of you should talk to your family, to your friends, especially if you're a woman, talk to your mother.
Yeah.
Find out what their perspective was so that you understand where you started out and you know where you can go next.
I absolutely agree. And I mean, for a while, when you're trying to figure out who you are, there is a lot of like resentment of things, but there's also a lot of forgiveness that happens and it's not always negative. Like I said, not all this stuff is negative. Like you move through it and once you understand parts of yourself or which chain, I like this chain metaphor. So like change you want to keep and change you want to break. Sometimes you have to mourn a little bit, you have to forgive or mourn like, oh, that happened. But when you can understand the perspective of the other person, just like with any relationship, just like in society, if we can understand each other a little bit more, it doesn't sting the same way, and it definitely releases a lot of that pressure around having to be perfect or whatever. Like, fuck that. Like, no thanks. Like, I want to be proud of my relationship with my mom. And in a lot of ways, I feel, closer to you than I ever have because we are in these glory years and I'm excited to be in them with you. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
I love you so much.
I love you too.
And I'm excited to get a big bear hug after this. And I think, rawr. I literally run around the house and go rawr to Ryan all the time. And he does it to me. It's just funny. But
we'll keep that in the chain.
Yeah, we'll keep the bear hugs. I like those. So thank you so much, Moneymakers, for listening. And Moneymakers, until next time, go out there and make that money.
If you want to put more money into the wallets of women like we do, then check out our website, thewomanownedwallet.com. And we can't wait to continue the conversation on our social media. So definitely follow us on our Instagram, @womanowned.wallet, and on TikTok, @womanownedwallet. You can support us by following our podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify. And don't forget to leave us a review. Thank you for listening to Woman Owned Wallet, the podcast.